I have been using the Onyx Boox Go 10.3 for the last week, and I wanted to share some of my first impressions and thoughts on it as someone who's never used an e-ink tablet before. I am on the road. I am sorry I don't have my tripod and my lights. I'm out here on an outdoor pool table shooting this, but I wanted to record this to make sense of some things in my own mind and to share maybe some points that haven't necessarily been brought up in other videos that I've seen posted. But first, some context. I live in Eastern Europe. I'm an American and I travel a lot for work. So what I travel with always is my MacBook Pro 14-inch, an iPad mini, and my Kindle Voyage. These always go with me everywhere. MacBook, of course, is for work. Kindle, of course, is for reading my books. But I bought the iPad a few years ago for a specific reason: to read my non-Kindle books that I get through the library and through the app Scribd, the subscription like Netflix for Books app, to read those. But over the last couple of years, I've started to use my iPad as my notes when I am speaking and when I am preaching, which I do quite often. I don't love using a screen, and I get tired of staring at the screen, but there's no denying all of the things this can do in a small package. When I started paying attention to e-ink tablets at the end of last year, Boox with their Android system was what I was looking for to be able to access Google Docs for my notes and these other apps, but it was more than I was looking for and more expensive than I was hoping. So I was really excited when the Boox Go 10.3 was announced, very excited to watch all of the reviews and the first impressions. But ran out of those and my use cases, specific to me. And so I thought, I've got to get this in my hands and actually try it out for me. So I wanted to share some of those first impressions with you and to tell you that I'm choosing either the e-ink tablet or the iPad. I don't need another gadget. I especially don't need to travel with another gadget. And so I've committed to myself that I will choose one or the other and live with that decision. And so here's some of my thoughts and impressions from the first week, again, using an e-ink tablet for the first time. So the thinness of the device is what everybody's talking about, and so I expected it to be thin. I understood how thin it was, but there was nothing like getting in my hands to realize how incredibly thin this thing is. It is so thin that actually, I know this is weird, I wish it wasn't so thin. It doesn't feel fragile in that sense. It feels like one good solid piece of gadget, but it is heavy. In fact, it's about the same weight as my iPad mini, I think. But it's so thin that I wish almost like there was more to grab onto. And so I will be getting the cover. It's going to be delivered soon. But yeah, it is so thin. It does feel like you could break it easily. Maybe that'll go away with time after I start using it. But I don't have the tossability factor that I do with my Kindle, throw it on the couch or whatever, or even my iPad, but maybe that's just because we've been together so long. So maybe it'll come with this, but man, this thing is thin. The screen is absolutely gorgeous, just like everybody says. The 300 ppi looks fantastic. Trying to get back to main screen here. I'm trying to keep things extremely simple, just for my reading apps and for a browser if I need it. And I've been super impressed with the Kindle experience. It did take a few tries to kind of get the font and the margins like I wanted, and it still feels quite weird to hold a page so large when I've been used to this for years. And the iPad mini has always been like the perfect size, so I've been really intrigued by the Tab Mini C, but wanted the newer screen and the nicer screen. So yeah, super sharp, super beautiful, but I want to do a quick comparison of the Kindle Voyage because I am just The Kindle Voyage has a reputation for being the best Kindle screen that's ever been released, and I have to say, it is amazing to look at this screen, which is years old by this point, and see the incredible contrast and the white of background, the lightness of the white background. Very, very interesting how well that's held up. There's been a lot of talk about the pen. I've never used one before. This one seems fine. I can tell it's on the cheaper side, but I have really no complaints. It is a little thicker than a pen I would normally choose to use. A lot of talk's been about how pointless it is because it falls off super easy on the side. I don't look at this as a way to travel with it, but when it's on my lap, it's a good place to put this while I'm not using it. But yeah, once I'm done, I throw this in a pocket and I put this in the laptop sleeve and it's fine. But yeah, it's a little thicker than it could be for me, but it works fine. I like it just fine. Getting it set up was not complicated, but I am an iOS guy and have not used Android in literally years. And it's not, of course, straightforward Android either, because it's the Onyx Boox system on top of it, or the skin on top of it. So it took a little bit to make sense of some things, and I'm still a little confused at kind of how storage is working and backup is working. But all in all, it's pretty straightforward. And I've gone through some of the tutorials to understand what the different functions are and been, just pleasantly surprised. Now, what was almost a take your breath away kind of moment was when I finally got things set up and I went in here to try the writing. I'd seen all the videos, heard all the latency talk, had it only to my Apple Pencil experience, but the moment I tried writing for the first time, it was amazing. I felt like I'm writing on this thing. The latency is fantastic. Again, I'm not comparing this to anything else except an Apple Pencil, which writing on an iPad's a whole different thing, on the glass and everything. But it was just incredible. I let my son sit down and draw. His first response was, "Wow, this feels like I'm writing on paper." And I thought, well, that's probably exactly what they were hoping you would say. If I could describe the writing experience, as everyone has tried to do to me online, to me, it feels like writing with a thin tip marker. Now, I still have a lot to learn. I'm getting kind of the gestures down and finding out little quirks and when to turn off gestures, when to turn off the touching with my fingers, because sometimes it messes up while I'm writing. I'm still trying to get it all customized the way I like it and make sense of the storage and the syncing and all of that. But I do have it syncing to Boox Cloud and to Google Drive, and that seems to be working just fine. It updates my notebooks every day, and so just like adds pages and reflects the changes. But the big test for me was what is it going to be like using this in my speaking notes. And so I installed Google Drive and I used this literally the day after I got it with my iPad mini standing by in case I totally messed something up. So it was strange looking at a screen that was not lit up. I also put little emoji slides for when I need to change my slides, and they usually stand out on the iPad because they're blue. And so I was, they weren't as obvious. So it was weird to look down at essentially what felt like a piece of paper, and in that darker room, like a darker piece of paper. But it worked just fine. What I don't love about it, and what seems to be specific to Google Docs, is no matter what I have the refresh rate set at, when I scroll, and when we get into a viewing mode, when I scroll, it makes a mess on the screen. And it's like this in every refresh mode. It's not like this when I browse on the internet. It's not like this in anything else I've noticed. But as I scroll while I'm speaking to my next section, the first time that happened, I was like, oh my goodness, I hope I can find my place after I do that. So there's something about it trying to keep up with Google Docs that just doesn't play nicely with scrolling. But The text looks great, and I'm basically back to a full-size sheet of paper right in front of me. And practically speaking, when I'm at a podium, I usually often have my computer for the slides and my iPad mini for my notes. And with this, though it's much thinner, it takes up more space. I have less space on the podium for a computer and my notes, which is a small thing, but sometimes an inconvenient thing depending on how big the podium is where I'm setting up at. I have been pleasantly surprised at using a browser on this tablet. It's e-ink, of course. It's not as smooth as anything else, but it works and it's not awful by any means. And I really like when I hit the address bar that I can come down here and just type in whatever the address is, which is much faster for using the keyboard, for me anyway. However, on iOS, Brave has a reader mode. On the desktop, Brave has a reader mode, but on Android, it appears not to have a reader mode. I downloaded Edge, which does have a reader mode, but didn't like that I couldn't adjust the left and right margins, and it was just these long pieces of text. I tried Firefox's reader mode, which it does have, but for some reason it's only giving me this teeny tiny column down the middle. All of them are, of course, usable, but as I've used the browser, I've thought there's got to be some kind of browser optimized for e-ink screen. So if anybody knows, that would be great to know. So where does this leave me? Like I said at the beginning, I committed to not keeping both of these. I don't need both of these. And as the iPad is a Swiss Army for all of these things and does them great and in many ways better, objectively better. But the iPad doesn't have the e-ink, and it feels so good to be able to get away from a screen as much as possible, especially when you have a job that requires you to stare at a screen. So it's been a week of me going back and forth. Keep this or keep this, and that's been a really good exercise, committing to that decision. But what I've decided is, it's taken several days, and I've gotten used to this tablet, and I've enjoyed this tablet more and more every day. But there are some things that I do on here every now and then that I can't do on here. And there are some scenarios where having a backlit screen really does trump having this reflective type normal piece of paper screen. So what I've decided to do is we are traveling in the States right now and heading back to Eastern Europe in a few weeks. And what I'm going to do is leave this here and live with this until I come back next time. And if over the next months that I'm using this, I realize this is awesome, but it just can't do everything I need it to do, then we'll come back, I'll start using this one and sell this one. If, however, I'm using this and just think this has improved my life, I'm enjoying this so much more, when I come back next time, I'll sell this one. But after only a week of playing with it and not getting a lot of real world work usage with this one, it feels too early to make the call. So I'm going to be living with this one for months and making the call next time I come back to the States, where I'm going to be leaving this one. All in all, I have been so impressed with this tablet. It took several days to get comfortable with. The first 2 days I was just like, I can't get this, and why does it do this, and what's going on? But I knew that was part of the process. And so after day 3, day 4, day 5, now I'm just enjoying it, and I find myself choosing this even in the evening when the light in the room that I'm in is darker, choosing this, and it just feels so much more like reading a book, a piece of paper. And when I think, wow, it's too dark, then I just think, well, it's time to get off, time to go to bed, or turn on a light, So my mind is doing different things with this, even more so than it does with my Kindle, because there's no light at all. So very interested to see how the Boox Go 10.3 and I get along in the coming months in both work and reading.